work on this computer for a second. So yeah, I want to make sure that this version of it, so this variation is the check to see if a developer has an avatar. If they do, we're going to delete the existing record and create a new record and set the developer to that record. And the key takeaways out of this is, yes, you can't delete something while it's being referenced. So while there's a finger pointing at it, you can't get rid of it. You have to tell that entity to remove their finger. Say, stop pointing at it before you can delete it. So we do have to set it to null first. But if we do that, we get rid of that finger pointing at it. How do we reference it? And that's what this does. This allows us to point a new finger at it, our finger, saying, hey, I need to remember where that is. Now I'm going to tell Sergio, hey, stop pointing at your avatar because I need to delete it. So as Sergio starts pointing at it, I can then take it, get rid of it, throw it out the window, no longer exists. And then over here with the delete method, and then we can over here create a new one and give that to Sergio, say, hey, start pointing at that now. That's what's happening here.
Gotcha.
And now we will go ahead and showcase the other variation where we're just going to edit the existing record. So,
So I will stop sharing. Yes, sir.
Yep. Cool. Matt, will be right. Oh, Matt's already back. Cool. Just saw the chat window. All right. That's not what I want to see. That's not big. That's just the form. And I'm gonna get rid of the music out of here.
Super mixes. Ooh.
What?
I saw your super mixes.
Oh.
Hey, listen, you need some, like I was telling them, you need, when I'm
I
coding.
would be interested in how many of you actually would actually know some of the bands I listen to, but some of them yes, some of them no.
Everybody knows Spice Girls, Cliff.
Very nice.
And also true.
All right. So first off, we'll go ahead and update that a little bit first, and then we'll talk about the refactors we're going to make. So let's head over to the developer repository. Not sorry, the developer controller, that word, which I don't have open for some reason. There it is. We'll head over to photo. Here, we're going to do exactly what we saw before. We're going to do the same check.
He does his post there, Cliff. Line 47.
I am post. Oh, I thought it was put.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how I got that error, but whatever.
I don't know.
It works.
You can switch it over if you want, but I thought I did put. All right, whatever. Anyway, if developer.avatar, get avatar, is not equal to null, that means they already have an avatar. So we want to, instead of saving it, we want to edit and to create a new one. So all we're going to do here is do developer.get avatar, set avatar, not that, sorry. What am I doing here? Right. Avatar. URL. And we're going to set it to the new URL we just had, which is going to be dev, which I should probably get rid of this thing now. It's kind of taking up a lot of space and being very distracting. Dev.avatar, get URL. And again, that's the avatar object from our body of the request. And so this will set the URL of the avatar that the developer has to this avatar. Last thing I'm going to do is, of course, do return. No, not that one, actually. Here. We'll do avatar repository. Save avatar. And so this will update the existing record. Now, since the developer points to the ID record, so it points to the ID of this avatar, do we necessarily need to update the developer? Has the ID of this avatar changed? Will this modify the, did we modify the ID of the avatar record?
I think it's gonna have the same ID because we just.
Right. Probably has the same ID because all we did here was change the URL, right? We didn't change any other records of it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking it's only the URL that's supposed to be changing.
Since the ID didn't change, then the developer shouldn't have changed. So we should be able to return the existing developer without needing to update it. we shouldn't need to save the developer. I'll do that. My only concerns with Java, now that I'm thinking about it though, but only with Java, now that I'm thinking about it, is that Java may have the old persistent data that it already pulled down. And because of how it tries to serialize information, it may retain the old information in this version, but then the second pull. Let's test it. I want to test it. Because I know the database is going to be fine. My question is whether or not the data being returned to us will be okay. That is what I'm sure of, is whether or not the data will update. Then again, though, I feel like I feel like I don't need this item here. Anyway, we'll do some refactoring if I need to. So we set Jim to a image. Hey, Sergio, you want to send me your picture again?
Yes.
Change Jim to that if he has one.
Oh, the scrubby dead.
Yeah, we go that way.
All right, hold on.
You need to
You
scrub
can just
it.
send it in Zoom if you want, not to Slack. How
Hold
weird
on.
in Slack.
It's a bit of a long URL.
It's all good. Yeah, it's not too long. Oh, there it goes. So we'll do post. Post 8080. Do developers / photo body raw JSON. ID 1 Jim tar URL and then that new URL we just got. Supply hog of it. We'll click send. Let's see.
All right. No errors.
Yeah, but so by the way, I do have all this stuff back because I did clean up my code a bit from all the changes we did yesterday. So I probably should go over that with you guys, but no errors. Where's the avatars? I gotta fix that. I probably should have that back for a second. Hey, look, it did update. Good. So it does serialize the newest information. That was what I was hoping to see. All right. You have the new data. Awesome. What do you get? Dev one, get not geekouts, developers one. There we go. Send for a second. Yep, gonna get the infinite loop, but it's fine for the moment.
So it's just ID one.
Yep, ID one. It keeps the same URL ID if we want. I'm gonna go ahead and I should have grabbed the older image again. I need my thing. See if I can grab my profile pictures again. Go for a different one. Check the URL. Oh, that's a long one. Won't use that one. I hate long URLs for this stuff. There we go, not too long. So just to make sure it works, we'll go ahead and update it again. Paste that in. Click send again, down to the bottom. We do see the new data, so good. Java's persistent system that I was hoping that was going to kick in does need that we don't need to update the developer record. The developer record was updated when we did update the item that we were referencing. So this was a pull by reference, it seems like. At least that's what Java and Jackson, the two packages we have in there, recognized and realized that the avatar here that got modified is the same one. So that is actually good to see.
I like this
Actually-
idea better than the deleting and putting a new one in. I like
Mhm.
this.
Good. Glad to hear it. The last thing we'll see if we can do we think we can actually do this where we don't actually have to create a variable for it, but we can actually modify the item in the developer directly. So we know we do get avatar here. So let's see if we can one line it by doing this. Copy that and do that here instead. Comment that out and do this as developer.getAvatar.
Oh, wow.
Theoretically, that does look like it should work, right? So we get the avatar and then we set the URL of that avatar. So this gets evaluated to an avatar, and then set the URL of that avatar to the avatar here. And then we save developer.getAvatar. And so we return an avatar from this, and that gets saved into the avatar repository.
Yeah, it's just
Theoretically, looks like
not the cleanest thing to reid, though. No, that would
Right.
take about 5 minutes of me staring at it and mapping it out in my head to be like, what is going on here?
in that case, let's keep it to this. And this is where, again, readability can be nice. While we do save a line of code, sometimes it's nice just to create a variable because it just makes it that much easier to see what's going on. So we can do this. Do we at least want to see if that worked?
Yes, I would like to
Okay.
see it at least. I don't want my complaining about my vision and processing to get in the way of actually seeing cool code execute.
All right. Let's go ahead and put a new user. We'll give that. So I'm going to give. So are you in my app yet? Let's find out.
I think I am, or maybe not.
I don't know. This is going to be a pain in the butt because I forgot. I got rid of my infinite looping issue.
Uh-huh.
There it is,
yeah.
ID 6. So we'll go ahead and give you the Scrubby Daddy.
That's me, Scrub Daddy.
Daddy Scrubby. What is it called again? Scrubby
Scrub
Daddy?
Daddy.
Scrub Daddy. Oh, God. 6.
Whoever chose that name for that brand is a genius.
Paste that in.
It's an example to follow.
Yeah, there you go. And you now have the Scrub Daddy image. There you go. Beautiful. And that did work. Oh, wait, we need to say the update works. Right. So actually, I probably should have done the other way first. Dang it. Let's do this one first, and then we'll switch you. So we'll switch you twice, actually. So we'll put in this one first, which is a cat image. It updated fine. Take a look. So it did update the existing record. And now we'll go ahead and put that back to the Scrubby Daddy and see that it changed yet again. Again, the ID has stayed the same both times. Second image, second ID. Looking good? Feeling good about that one? All right.
So doing this way, you save memory by not using
Yeah.
a variable.
You're saving some space complexity because you're not creating a variable in a place variable. But again, I will say for companies, sometimes they are okay with space complexity if you're increasing readability. So if you're ever told, if you're ever asked, why did you create a variable, you can simply say, oh, just for readability. I figured developer.getID, getAvatar.setURL, dev getAvatar, getURL, and then developer.getAvatar was very wordy and very long looking and didn't really look very nice. While it was smaller, I wasn't saving a lot of space or a lot of things. So while it does add a little bit of memory usage, the readability here is kind of nicer when you see that. We know we're changing the avatar and saving that avatar, which can be nice to see. All right. Let me think anywhere else. No, I think that's good. But yeah. And I will say as a hint, what you had in the line that you had in Sergio is definitely going to be key for your location system when you're saying that a car is no longer at that location. So when you're removing the location from a car because it's been rented, Sergio's code is very, very useful there. There's a certain line there you want to use because we don't want to, unlike in these ones, we want to delete the item when it's no longer connected to a user. We want to delete the avatar when it's no longer connected to a developer. When a location is not connected to a car, we don't actually want to delete it from the record because we want to be able to have it open. So then we can do with the end result being, you actually want to have a version of a find version in your location repository says find all locations by null vehicle. So if your vehicle is null, that's one of those key things where you can see, hey, show me all the locations that don't have a vehicle. You wouldn't actually put the null in. That's actually not the correct function name, by the way, because you wouldn't actually put the word null in the function name, but you would want to put in like find vehicles, find locations by vehicle, and what you would send is null. Anyway, now let's go ahead and fix some of our issues. So for the first record, I want you guys to update a bit. Is we're going to make sure that all the getters and setters for our lists are back. So I have my set geekouts, I have my get geekouts, I have my get languages, and I have my set languages. So make sure those are there. What I will say though is we're actually going to remove the lists from our constructors. We don't need those in the constructors because we're never going to actually send a pre-filled list of geekouts or languages during the creation of our user, potentially. You could do it in languages if you want, but we're definitely not doing the geek outs. No one's going to have an initial geek out the first when they join our system, right? We create the user, create the developer. They're not going to have any geek outs. So that is a complete waste of our time and it's unnecessary. So I'm going to remove that one. Could we have it set up where the user can set up and have their languages by default? We definitely can. So we can leave that one. That one's fine.
So how would you know this?
Well, again, this would be you. The more you understand their data, you would think about use cases. So if we think about when the developer signs up for our site, what data, which of this data is going to be included in that initial item?
Yeah, no, I knew that they wouldn't have it, but just for like reference, would I guess if I keep using the object, I would see that data would be set in there. And I'm like, well, I guess I could actually not like put this. I don't need this in my constructor because I don't have data like coming in when I'm seeing this. I'm just seeing like as repetitiveness as you're running.
Yeah.
It, you would.
And actually, another thing about it, no, we also wouldn't do this because we wouldn't have the list they send us wouldn't necessarily be languages with IDs. So this would actually end up being more complicated where we need to actually find each item in our database so we get the right ID numbers and all that some fun stuff. So we're probably going to set it up where both languages and avatars are going to be secondary calls. So when they first create their account, we're never going to actually get the language list or their avatar or their, and they're not going to have any geek outs from the beginning. So this can be simple for you guys. One of the things that can be very simple is to not include lists in your first item here for simplicity. Is there a way to do it? 100% there are ways to do it. That's the main thing I always want to clarify. There's definitely ways of doing it. You can also set it up where you can pull a MySpace pull where, and then yes, you can have them start with a geek out already, a hello world geek out already assigned to them, automatically generated. Like in MySpace, when you first joined, you initially had an immediate friend right away. Remember him?
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Tom, right? Yeah.
Yep, Tom.
The dude with the white shirt smiling.
Oh yeah. So same concept there. Well, in that system, yes, everyone started with a friend immediately. We could technically set our system where everybody who signs up and immediately has a geek out that just says hello world with their name. We could totally do that. So there are ways to do this, but not necessary. And these can also, in the beginning, in our wooden plain version of our application, these can be additional API calls to the system. So the first call to the system just sets their name, email, and cohort. The second API call goes ahead and sets that person's languages. And then the third one can set their avatar. And these can also be, I'm sure some of you have gone through signups where there's like multiple pages for the signup, right?
Yeah. So
it's not all done.
You can make a constructor like a developer. This would be the developer here. And then you can make one called just quote unquote developer pro, where you can start adding in like more fields. And
we know constructors would just have the same name.
Yeah.
So don't forget that. Yeah.
Like this one would have like, this would have languages and what company you're working for and other like where this developer would be just like me, which I don't know what company.
For a simple just example, if we did want to do the avatar at the same time.
Oh yeah, when you sign up.
We do first do. What was it? We would need the avatar. We have the avatar repository, so that's already good. We do avatar. Oh no, this wouldn't have it here. So we would need to have a method that we would even be able to call a method from another class. That way we would then send the avatar to that would create the entry for us and return an actual avatar item. So we're not actually not going to do it here. We would need to have something that has the access to the avatar repository.
Oh, okay.
Most likely what we would have though actually is that this would actually be what we would send from the front end is we would actually create the avatar first, get the ID number back, and then send the ID number and URL here to save to the developer record. Sound good? Yeah. Again, there are ways of doing it. You would just need to accept it in the constructor and then somehow be able to create the record as well through the repository.
Again, you have to like differentiate. You have to figure out what the front end's responsibility versus the back end's responsibility.
Yep, I tend to do that. A very common practice on the constructors is to exclude your relationship items and to do those separately. Whatever I've researched on. So I'm going to pull those out. Let's also talk about bidirectional and one-directional relationships. So when we pull, let's say, for example, we pull a list of developers. Do we want that list of developers to include all the geek outs that the developer posted?
Oh,
No, if we're just looking at developers, no.
Yeah, we're just looking at the developer list. That's
Oh,
it. We
right,
just want to get a
yes.
list of developers for the site. So I'm like searching through developers. We don't want that list of geek outs there. But when we pull a geek out, we want to see the developer that posted it, right? We want that developer information. At least some of it, right? Which we'll talk about a little more. We want some of the geek out information. Sorry, the developer information. So this is what I would argue that this is a one directional relationship. Where it's one reference to the other. Now we can do requests here. We can definitely find all the geek outs from a specific developer. But we don't need that. We really need this list here at all. So what we can do here is we can actually, one thing we can do is comment this out. Another thing we can do also is simplify our joinings and our one-to-many systems, among other things. So there's a bunch of different ways to handle this. So one thing, of course, you can comment it out and not include it at all. This does not remove the relationship that was managed by geek out. And I want to show that though is through a different system before I get rid of it. I'll get rid of that join column for a second. And on the one-to-many, I'm going to add a new item called map by. All right. And then we're going to pick the field that the other entity is mapping this. So we go back to geek out. The field is called developer. And so here we're just going to put developer. What JP will do is check in any, when it sees this, it's going to look for all the items that are referencing it. And key is going to try to find the object too. So it's going to look for this and it's going to find the field called developer and look how that's set up. And so we don't need that redundancy there. So that's going to simplify this a little bit. So it's saying that geek out is going to identify, it's going to be the one that manages it, be the one that creates that instance. All right.
I have a question.
Go for it.
What would happen if you have multiple one-to-manys? So if you
So
have
again,
another one-to-many and it also has developer
That's
as
what I'm saying. It's keying, it's doing two things. It's using the entity here. So it does need to be an entity here. If I was to put something that wasn't an entity here, it's going to yell at us saying that this item is mapped to a non-entity object.
Oh, I see.
Yep, because there's another field here that's being automated. It's called target entity. If you don't enter anything here, it's going to look in the class here and find the data type here that is an entity. It's going to look for data type. It's going to say list is not an entity. Oh, geek out is, I'm good. I'm going to use that. But I can also tell it to target others. And this is how you can actually use interfaces here, kind of. So you can use interfaces, but you still have to specify a specific entity. So you can't have two entities that implement the same interface and have it be vague. It doesn't work that way. So just be aware of that. But target entity is done by default by JPA. But if your item here is a little harder to read, if you have a very complex system here and you want to ensure that JPA gets it right, we could always put geekout.class and that'll tell it what class to use. This is a field that you tend to not really need to fill in unless you want to be very specific. So what I will say, actually, there is, since I haven't tested it myself, there is a chance though that if you're right, that if there are multiple entities that use the developer key to do a one-to-many, you may require this, just that it knows which entity to go look for this field in. So I will say, Freddie, this is me based on my understanding of how JPA works, but if I am a little off on it, because I haven't actually tested it myself, worst case scenario is once you put this in, the system will know how to find it and how the mapping works.
Multiple entities?
What's that?
Can you target multiple entities that reference that developer?
Yeah, I'm gonna say no, because again, you have to give it a single entity here.
Yeah,
You
okay.
can't do multiple entities here.
And what is, I'm confused, what's mapped by developer? What's that mean again? I forgot.
So it's mapped by, and what's the field in this entity that is the connection, that is the one-to-many connection. That's the relationship that we're doing.
But the field, okay.
Field in Geek Out.
And geek
which is
out,
this
okay.
one.
Yeah, let
Yep.
me look, okay, all right.
So this is gonna simplify some things. So we got that.
Well, we got developer, now there's a developer ID, is that developer ID, that developer?
That's the table. That's the
Oh.
table's column name.
Table is okay.
Yeah, that's the column name, but for us, the field is developer. Again, field, not table name. Not column name, sorry. Not column name, field name.
Field name. Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. Oh, field name's right there. Okay. All right. All right.
Field. So
Yeah.
when you see name here, it's not naming the field, it's naming the column.
Yeah, I
we're
know
doing.
that. I was looking at the table and I
Yeah.
saw developer ID. That's what I was referring to.
Yep,
the
yeah.
column one. Okay.
So this wants the object field that is doing the mapping.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. All
Yep.
right.
No, these are great questions. I want you guys to be very clear on it. So keep that. Those are good questions. So you got that. So now, if I reboot this. Ooh, right. So there's this one. It's still going to showcase everything if I remember correctly. So there's one more field that I need to add in. And the languages are still going to do it. But yeah, the geekouts is still there, as you can see. We don't want that. The other thing we can add in here is something called fetch type, which you guys have been seeing.
Oh,
We don't want these loading when we pull this item. So we're going to do fetch type lazy.
oh, lazy is the best type.
Yes, it's going to keep it from actually pulling that information unless we ask for that specific information.
Yeah.
We don't need it.
Eager is the one that's like completely just
Pull it all. Yep.
Yeah, pull it all.
Pull everything.
Pull everything. Yeah, I
Yep.
remember the fetch typing here. I remember this feature.
Head. I remember correctly in my head.
Yeah, Eager
Got that.
definitely was the brute force one, the one that would get everything.
Yep. Yeah, lazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the last one I was going to do, and again, this is only that we still have this list here. I'm actually just showing you these things, but this will still pull stuff. For this one, it is definitely one directional. We do not, under any circumstance, want the list of geekouts to appear in this system. We only want the list of geekouts if they want a list of them. Even then, we probably only want to paginate them, right? So even if we want to pull, because try to imagine me Twitter pulling all your tweets when I just want to look at your profile. That'd be insane, right? So in this case, we're actually going to just comment this one out. This example, we don't want this at all. I'm going to comment this one out. On the count, so we're going to do that. And I'm going to show you, though, we still have a slight problem. You'll see what it is in a second. Oop, right, I got to get rid of those two. So get rid of the getters and setters now. Comment those out. There it goes. There's still going to be an issue we have, and you'll see it in a second. So we pull again. Now this looks fine. Still got languages, but at least we're no longer pulling geek outs. If I go over to geek out step 1, though, I have to pull all of Jim's geek outs. Still see languages. Oh yeah, it isn't doing that. It isn't pre-filling him and everything. But look at all the data for Jim that we get. We get all of his information. We don't need all that, do we? All right. I do want to make sure I still get this data when I pull Jim, but when I pull the developer, when I pull the geek out, I don't want all this. And so there's an annotation we can use to hide data in complex objects. And so here, under geek out now, under this developer item, we use @JSON. And there's a lot of things we can do here with modifying how this entity or how this field is represented in the JSON. There's a lot of features here that you can use. We are not going to talk about any of them, all of them. So yeah, you'll need to do some of your own referencing on some of them. The one we want is the JSON ignore properties. Now, JSON ignore just says to ignore this field altogether, never include it. Any ideas on what field you might want to do that on? Any data type you never want to send down to the front end?
ID.
No, that we kind of need.
Password?
There you go, right? The encrypted password, right? For the user account, when we finally encrypt that password, we don't want to send that down. Or any other just back-end data, right? Any proprietary data. We don't want to send any of that down. That stuff should be set private for back-end processing only. So that's what JSON ignore is really useful for. We can hide data that is proprietary, that is ours only. If you guys remember when I talked about that, again, that was that Darknet Diaries episode that talked about the UK Prime Minister putting up his boarding pass online, and The guy browsing the source code of the website was able to find metadata underneath it, hidden there to find the guy's phone number and stuff. This is the stuff that should be ignored and should not be sent down to the front end. Even though it wasn't showing on the site, it was being sent to the front end, and the guy could find it through sniffing through the data. But here we're going to do JSON ignore properties because we don't want to ignore all of developer. We don't want to ignore certain fields. We want to tell it don't include certain properties of this class. We need to provide it a list of data or an array. How do we do an inline array?
Curly braces?
Yes. The string. First one to do is languages. That's the annoying one. We don't want to include that list of languages. We don't need his email. We could argue we don't need his ID because we've searched by ID, don't we, in order to find these, but we could include it. So that's not a big one. Let's think, what else do we not want to see? We go pull up the developer object, pull over here and look up here the fields. Clean some of that up. So any other fields we want to not include when we pull this down. I'm going to avatar now. Language. Any others? Do we want to pull down the avatar?
No, we don't need that.
We can leave that.
We're just
Let's see, that
getting,
means we'll get their, we're so far going to get their ID, which is fine. We're going to get their email, sorry, their name. We will get their cohort. We won't get the languages. So we're not going to get languages. We are not going to get the avatar, and that's all the fields, right? Yeah, that's all the fields.
that's all the fields.
Let's test it. So refresh. Back over. First off, let's make sure this, well, actually, no, we'll do this one. So I was going to say, we want to make sure it didn't break it. Oh, yeah, we'll do this first. Make sure this works now. Send. How does that look? Much nicer, right?
The screen, yeah.
Yes.
We got the developer information we want, but we didn't get all of it. Now there is one thing you get to decide though. Notice how in this one, we only see the developer ID. This is a way to streamline your information. We can pull Jim's information for the first one, and as long as your front end knows this, if it ever needs that information, it knows to pull it from the first record.
Oh,
So you can pull that out initially. If this is a situation though where you need it in each one, this is where we no longer want that JSON identity info data. So that's what's doing this. This says only fill out the identity info the first time you see it, whenever that ID is different. If the ID is the same, don't refill it. That's what this is doing for us. So just for fun of it, I'm going to comment this out. You can hold on to it if you want for the moment. I just want to show you what this does now. If I comment that out, I want to show you the difference. Oh, I think I did the geek out, so that might not make a change. I think I did the wrong class. Yep, wrong class. Whoops, on. I'm gonna do it on this one actually, sorry. Comment out the one under developer. So developer is no longer gonna use the identity info. So it's gonna do that one. So you can see what this is doing for us. So refresh again. Again, you don't need to do this yet. You can decide after you see what this does, whether or not you want to keep it or get rid of it. Pop back over here, click send. And so we can see here that every single geek out now gets the same developer ID. So this could be useful so that way you don't have to extract the first one and keep track of that in a separate item on your front end. You can just send each one of these as an object and go through it. In some front ends, this is useful because then you don't have to, again, like I said, you don't have to extract that item once and then send that along. You can just send each of these blocks along and you know you have the data each time. The negative side of this, what would you say the negative side to this? If you had to come up with a reason why this is not good.
If the developer had like, I don't know, like 24 fields that, I mean, you had like data that's like a lot of fields that you just don't need to see it all the time.
Or let's say this person, let's say we just pulled 30 geek outs from this person. So each one of those 30 geek outs has this information in here. What is that costing us, the server, the provider?
Well, a lot more data.
What's the term for that? When you're spending data on a server, what's the term of art for that? It's not just data, because we're not spending data on our, we're not spending
Using
hardware data.
resources.
It is resources. Do we know what the resources are for data that's going across the internet?
It's the
Is
load.
it bandwidth?
Bandwidth. Who said that?
Many.
Hey, nice job, man. Yeah, bandwidth. This is one of those common things you have to pay on for websites and stuff. You have to pay for your bandwidth. How much data are you sending and how much data are you receiving? And so this is one of those things that you can do to protect yourself by minimizing your bandwidth is by utilizing this system. As long as you know that the data is coming in and you have to pull that unique data or that non-unique data from the first record only, you can just pass that on to each one. Totally fine. Just be aware of that. As long as you're aware of it, you can manage your front end for that. But if you're concerned about it, you have these two options now. So again, two different ways to manage your JSON data and manage how you're sending information down. Let's update the language now to do the similar thing. So in language, I want to do this bidirectional, but in this case, how I want to do this one. So again, I'm going to remove this identity info thing because I'm trying not to use it. I want to show you guys different ways of modifying your information.
Are we going to go into depth on what that is, or are we going to save that for another time?
Like I said, I'm just doing the basics of it. The overall use case of it is is a bit more complex than we have time for.
Okay.
The main thing again, like this, is just to reduce repetitiveness. It's going to generate the information to remove and reduce repetition in your output. So if you have to include these things that are going to be potentially recursion based, like you guys had before, you have to include these so that it stops that never-ending cycle. It allows you to include all data, but only include all the data one time. So if you cannot get around and you have to send back data that is potentially going to loop in on itself, this is what you need to include. Because it makes sure that each unique data is only included once. Otherwise, as you saw, if you have something that references itself, you get this never-ending cycle. This prevents that because it says, hey, for any unique item, only, what's the term, unwrap it once. So
Okay.
that's a term you're going to hear about, wrapping and unwrapping. What you saw before when this just said developer one, that was an unwrapped object. It's still packaged under that ID of one. So all the data that's relevant to developer one was packaged up. It has been unwrapped. These right here, what you're seeing on my screen right now, are unwrapped developers. We took the ID, we got the data that's associated with it and put it in. So what JSON identity info does is tells it to only unwrap each instance once, each variation of it once. And the property is the unique field that you're telling it to identify by.
So you could change that property to another field or another.
Yes, but only if that field is going to be part of the original JSON.
Yeah.
So I changed this to name, it wouldn't work because developer's only showing the number one, developer's only showing number one. So it wouldn't be able to recognize before unwrapping that it is the same or not.
Yeah,
Makes
but
sense?
but if you change it to name, would that still work because name is the same?
My understanding, I don't think so. Let's see. Because-
ID is just, ID makes sense because ID is always a constant.
Right.
There, it's always-
Because yes, it's two people with the name Jim.
Yeah.
It's only going to get the first one. So again, so I'll be honest on that one again. I didn't look up non-ID properties. Anytime I've looked at things on this, you're always putting an identifier in here, a unique field here. So I'm going to keep it like that. We're not going to get too sidetracked on it because I don't want to make this more complex than necessary. So the key use case of this system is to make sure that when something is unwrapped, it's only unwrapped once. And if it runs into the same item later, it doesn't unwrap it. And that's how you stop that repetitive uncycling. Because you're not saying, hey, for developer one, I want to pull up his data. So you see language. Oh, language for Jim has these languages. So Jim has language one. So let me unwrap language one. Well, language one has developers. So let me pull into that. And I see, oh, of course, Jim is in the language developers. So I'm going to unwrap Jim again. It's like you're already unwrapping him, but then I'm going to unwrap Jim again. And I see languages. Oh, hey, Liz, the language is language one. Let me unwrap language one again. And now we see that infinite loop, right? What this does is like, hey, I'm going to unwrap the developer one. That's Jim, goes through, gets the languages. Hey, I got languages. Here's language one. Unwrap that. I get to language one's developers. Well, is developer one. Well, I'm already unwrapping developer one, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show developer one. We then see developer two. Travis is there. I'll unwrap Travis. So we get some nesting, but a lot less. We're only going to unwrap Jim once. We're going to unwrap Travis once. When we start unwrapping Travis's object, We get to his languages. If he has language 1 as well, it's not going to unwrap it. It's going to keep it. So far, so good. That's what this allows it to do. It says unwrap each item 1 time. But the other way to prevent this is just to not include those nested items if you're already inside of one of those. So in this case, one of the simplest ways we're going to hide this, we're going to help this thing out, is under language. When we pull the developers, bare minimums, JSON ignore properties, do not include the languages. Bare minimum, right? If we hide the languages of the developers inside the languages, we shouldn't get that nesting, right? Let's see how that works. So one change, I made one change so far. So again, pull up the developers first. All right, I'm going to pull that up right now for the moment. Did I reboot? Hold on. No. Avatar. Yep. So no languages. Good. Oh, right. It's pulling developers. Right. Wait. Yeah. Right. Okay. That's what I did. Right. I didn't make the change yet on that side. Nice what I did. So that's fine. So yeah, we still see a little bit of nesting, but yeah, if we go through here, we see ID1. So that's the developers. We get Jim's languages, and we see that it's still pulling out all the language details. Probably something we want to change later. So that's still pulling in everything, including the developers of this language, because we didn't tell it not to include that. So this is doing that. But if I go to here under languages and I pull that up, we see that here under developers, the languages for those developers don't pop up. We don't see the other languages, which we don't need to know. We just want to know the developers that do this language, right? So bare minimum, we do that. Look how much cleaner our system is. Now let's clean up this one. When we pull up the profile again of a user here, we get their languages. We probably don't want the developer list, do we? Of that language. We don't want to see all the other developers that do that language under that person, do we? We just want to see the language details, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Make sense? I'll make sure everyone's following along. I got some scrunched up faces from people. So make sure it makes sense. So here, if we're thinking about the data that we want, we don't need under developers. So I pulled the list of developers, and again, we'll put a single one just to make it a little better. Oh no, I already changed that, right? Never mind, that's not gonna work. Bad example.
So you just want to get rid of developers underneath the tag.
Yeah, under languages, we want to get rid of developers. We want to ignore that property.
Okay.
So under developer, scroll down to our list of languages here. And JSON ignore properties. Developers. You don't want that in there. Refresh again. Over. Send again. And now it looks a lot nicer. We just have the languages and the 2 developers that do their information, and not the other languages that developer can do. We don't really care about that. Or sorry, yeah, we have Jim and the languages he does, and none of the other developers that do those same languages. We just want to know the languages Jim does. And here, now, this is very important that we got rid of that identity item. This is part of the reason why I didn't like that. I'm going to put it back for a quick second to make sense. Understand why. Again, leave it off on yours. I want to showcase again why I wasn't liking the fact that we were using that everywhere, why that was our current solution to it, why I knew my default understanding on Tuesday was wrong. Travis's language 1 of the languages he does is already ID'd as 1. So that means I would need to make sure my front end is smart enough to pull out of Jim this language separately, so that if anyone else has that same language, I can put that data in. My system's not going to send that out. See the problem there? That's not useful, because there's no guarantee that they're going to have the same languages, right? Or that they're going to be in the same order or anything like that. I would have to go through each one and pull out all these uniques into a separate system in my front end, a separate hash map of all my languages, which would be nightmarish, right? It's gonna be nightmarish to do that. So in this one, this is one of those few cases where, yeah, we definitely want to include that data. So this is why I want to make sure I showcase these other ways of handling this information. So some space spots, that's useful, and that's information you desperately need to have. Other spots, you do not want it at all. Just be aware of that. All right, so get rid of those, geek out. I have it going there. So you know what? I'm actually going to delete these out of 2 of them. I'm going to keep it in. I'm going to leave it in developer so you guys can have it there if you want it. But I am going to get rid of it in language and geek out just to clean up we don't want too many comments in there. So under language and geek out, I got rid of those JSON identity info comments. I'll leave it in developer so you see it because that might be nice to have to streamline it for the geek out page so you can have less JSON data. I just want to clean up some more comments. Last thing I'll say is on this one, again, this is another one you could argue. Maybe we don't want to list the other developers when we pull up the list of items. So if we go back here, I do all languages. Maybe I don't want to list all the developers under each one. Maybe I just want to list the names, then I could maybe do a dot length or something like that. I don't need all this information from people who are using it, right? There's a bunch of things you can do.
That's true. You could just
I can hide more data if I wanted to, and that's the thing. You can hide more data. So under the JSON ignore properties, turn that back into a list. If there's a chance again that I don't want to include the developers at all when I pull from languages. So when I pull the languages, I don't want to show the developers in that data. Like again, I don't want this in, just like under developers. When I pull a developer, I don't want to list the geek outs. So same concept there. I don't want to list the geek outs. Oh, wrong thing. /1, there we go. I don't want to list the geek outs here. So I'm pulling up a single developer. I don't want to list the geek outs. Same concept here. Let's say I pull the languages. I don't want to see the list of developers there. I could pull them the same way we do the geek outs by developer. So I can see all the geek outs for a developer through this route because I have a query thing for it because of the joins. I could do the same thing here. When I pull the language, I don't want just that language data and none of the developer data. But I can set it up where I can do languages /dev/1 to say, hey, everybody find me all the developers that use language 1. Just like in here, I can hey, find me all the geek outs done by developer 1. Find me all the languages, all the devs that use language 1. So I could do a similar concept here. I could do a similar concept there. Find me all the developers that use language 1. So this could be considered, you could turn this into a single directional one as well. We could literally just comment this out and not include that at all. And this would still work. The many-to-many could still exist, even if you don't have that bidirectional information there. And that was a key element that I was leaving out that I shouldn't have left out. But this is not required at all to have. A many-to-many does not have to have the many-to-many annotation and field on both entities. And just to prove that, I'm going to do one quick thing. I'll do that. I'm going to go to terminal. Okay. Factor. Get that code up there. Git checkout fd test. So I'm going to check this out so you can see what I'm doing. This is not going to affect our main. You can see how it works, that it will still function. I'm going to get rid of this annotation, all this concept here. So we no longer have a developer list in the language list object or the language entity. That. Run it. Oop, not that button. That button. There it goes. It runs. I can still click on languages here. I get all the languages, none of the developer information. I can do language 1, get all of the Java info, but I can still go into developers 1 and see all the languages Jim uses. So I still have that many-to-many connection. I can still see that the many-to-many connection exists. And if I really want to, just a quick one, it's still in this separate item. Language repository. Right. Okay. That should do it. Find developers by language ID. Just to remind myself if this is language repository or developer repository, but we'll try it. Or which, yes. E. Turn. Dot. By language ID. ID. That should do it. Watch it yell at me, not a bug. Yep, dang it. Probably goes in the developer repository, actually. I was remembering so this is something I'm going to clarify right away. Remembering which repository certain things go in with the relationships is something that will always be a guess. I have yet even myself to find the pattern and how to memorize it. So do not feel like, oh, I should know, you should know instinctively where a item goes.
Can you hold on that method for a second now that you've put it in? I just need to copy it in.
Oh, I didn't even know anyone was actually following along because I did this in a separate
I
branch.
think it's
So
by the return type. If you're returning developer, it goes into the developer.
I think that might be the pattern. I feel like I've done
Because you
I've done
can't
others,
return a
but
developer from a language repository.
That,
you might be
makes
right on
sense.
that.
That
That
makes
might be the
sense.
pattern.
Well, that makes sense. Plus the language
Yeah.
ID is also on the developers table too.
Well, it's actually not. Neither one is on either one of them. It's in the join table. Remember, it's in a separate table.
Okay, I think I'm all caught up with that now.
Remember, list of languages to developers of the many-to-many. So there's a joining table in between the two. So language ID and developer ID is in the join table. So that's actually part of my problem now that I'm thinking about it. It might not recognize this. I might have to double check my notes before we do this one.
Should it be find all by language ID instead of find
You're right, it
developers?
is find all too. Oh, wait, yep, that's what I forgot too. God dang it. That might be part of the problem. That actually might work in the other one still. Ugh. Well, oh, right. And not only that, I need to put it here anyway because I just realized I was dumb because I went to I was in the developer repository, right? Or was it in which repository? Which controller was I in?
You were in the
You need
developer
the word,
controller.
you need
I
the
was
word
in developer.
developers in that method.
Oh,
Cliff?
which controller was I in? Where did I add that route? I was in language controller, yeah. And I did this into a repository for it. That was the language repository. So you know, let's just try it. I'm going to flip back into language just to test it. So I'm going to comment it out here, but I'm going to copy it.
You need the word developers in there for the
Yeah,
file.
that's what I
Well,
was
it's the
asking.
all too. So it's trying to match this map to a list.
But since you're returning a list of developers, do you need the word developers? Because you don't have the word developers in the other find all.
Yeah,
Well, no, this one because we were finding, so this one was finding developers. So this is the same repository. So that's why we didn't need it here. So it was
Oh.
saying find all of what it is. So when you don't include what it is, what you're finding, it should include that by default. But actually, no, I see what you're saying. So yeah, find all. That's probably going to be the correct one. Yeah, I think I'm goofing up my syntax here. This thing is difficult to memorize. No, that actually looks much nicer. Yeah, that we need to put ID because it is an ID and that is the field. That will be, or that's the column name. Could be language ID or language. We'll find out. That means we would need to move this from the language controller to the dev controller, because right now this is under the dev repository, or we would at least need to include the developer repository here. I'd have to bring the developer repository into this item. So let's move this. Can just do lang. Cut it. I'll move it over to the developer controller. There. By language ID. I pull up my cheat sheet for the JPA naming conventions. I really never find that link again. When I was teaching myself this a couple months ago, I actually had a cheat sheet page that explained all the keywords you can use in these method names that would help you to identify it. And I lost that link. I wish I'd saved it because I would have shared it with you guys. But I can't seem to find it anymore. It's really aggravating when that happens. You ever find a really good resource and you forget to save it and then you lose your tab and can't find it ever again? Dang it. Languages, by languages. Right, because it doesn't go by the table name, it goes by that. I wonder if it'll also let me provide an ID number though. Probably not. I need to provide it the language, which I will not. Oh, I really need to pull up my cheat sheet.
it's a pretty good one, but not really as good.
Don't think I'm gonna like it, but it does. All right, good. Let's try it. So, developers, let's go here, API. Developers / lang. This should be language 1. So this should be anybody who knows Java. So Jim and Travis definitely should pop up.
Internal error.
Nope, doesn't like it. Yep, wants the whole object, doesn't it? Yep, it does. All right, I'll double check on that another time. I gotta find my cheat sheet for repository naming conventions. I'm gonna look for that this weekend for you guys because that's a resource that you guys would really benefit from.
What about
Having a little cheat
languages ID?
What's that?
You have
Languages?
language ID. What about languages ID?
I think this is an underscore cheat. I know what I want to do, and you're on the right page. There is one. I'm trying to remember it. It's either it might be underscore.
And you have to put the underscore in because that's what I did when I was checking the.
I think it is.
When I
Yeah,
was checking the.
that does ring a bell. Yes.
When I was doing a check.
Need- Nice. Again, I'm gonna look for it this weekend. I'm going to search for there was a website I found. It was really useful. It was a website. It had a nice little table chart of all the keywords that it has and some shortcuts and all those things about how you can construct these repository names so you can come up with your own without any SQL. I'm going to look for it again this weekend because it was a really nice item for me when I was learning. And I'm really aggravated that I didn't save it because I think it'll benefit you guys a lot to have that for your projects. I am going to look for that.
I found a bunch of them, but I don't not one. that-
There was one I feel like a month ago when I was looking into this myself, me a month and a half ago, and I really liked it and it helped me learn a lot of it. So I know a good number of the shortcuts, but I forgot to save it. And hey, there it is. Let's see. Let's double check though. We got ID1 Jim. He has language one, language one, language one, and then nobody else. So Sergio wasn't pulled because he has no languages under him. Hey, there we go. So there's more shortcuts for you. Underscore ID. That's what we wanted.
Yeah, that's what I used when I was doing the geeky likes thing when we're just trying to replace the avatar.
Ah,
I said find by that, and it came back null because it didn't have an avatar. I'm like, okay, now I know that it doesn't have a new one. I should be able to create a new one.
and I'm actually glad we did this because this is something you can use now for your locations. You could say find all under the location repository, find all by vehicle, and then have it be null, and you could send null. So that would help you guys for that. That'd be a good route for you guys to have in your rental app. Find all under the vehicle repository, find all by vehicle. Sorry, under the location repository, find all by vehicle, and what you would send as a parameter would be null. And so that way you could find all the empty locations so that you can then pick a spot for your car to go. Make sense? Like that. What was it? Travis said that, like, oh, that sounds good. So those are some things there you can use. You can also do the find vehicle by location ID. And so that'll help too. So if you want to just see what vehicle is in a certain location, you can have that route too. So I will, though, again, I'm going to search this weekend for my little shortcut page, my page that had the nice list of all the key phrases. If anyone finds anything for this, of course, you can share too. But I'll see if I can find the cheat sheet that I liked. Because it's good to have it. I want those on hand now. So whenever I do these side tangents of a cool route that I want to do that I know I can do, because I knew I can do this. I just couldn't remember this format. All good though. Do we see how this works? So the main goal of this, so just to clarify what we did, I removed the bidirectional relationship. So we no longer have languages languages doesn't actually have a list of developers anymore under itself. It's no longer managing or maintaining a list of developers of who's doing it. We still have the many-to-many relationship that has been initiated or generated by the developer entity. So the developer entity is what's creating that many-to-many relationship. It creates the table and creates that back and forth relationship and allows us to do it. Same with the routes. It's all direction. It's all one directional through developer. Developer does all the work creating those two together. And since we never have a situation where we say, hey, add a developer to a language, we always say added a language to a developer, it can be it's very easy to argue that it is one directional. And we don't necessarily need to list all the developers under the language when we pull for that individual language. We just want that language data, especially when we want to pull the list of languages. So we pull the list of languages, again, if we think about a use case, this is us pulling a list for our drop-down menu when a user is selecting the languages they know, right? We want to be able to show them all the languages there, or when someone wants to search for developers by a language, we want to just show that we just want to be able to pull from our database, hey, database, show us all the list of, give us a list of all the languages we currently support in our system that we know of. And that way we have these straight coded language, these language names are known. We don't have to worry about people typing JavaScript with a capital S on accident because they think they need to type JavaScript title cased, which is not. Or you have to worry about people typing JS when they want JavaScript. They'll click on JavaScript and we'll get that consistency there. So that's one of the use cases for this. So when we do that, when we pull down from the server, hey, I just need the data to fill up my drop-down menu. I don't need the developer names, right? I don't need this list of developers, do I? Yep, Jim, yep, Keith got it. He's like, no. We don't need that. Around and around, maybe, I don't know. Hey, we want it, we can always add it later. It's fine. But at the same time, if we do want to see all the developers that do that language, we can add that route in because that connection is there, that join is there. So we can tell the system, hey, pull that in. Sound good? All right, so multiple different ways to handle this stuff, multiple different ways to pull the information you want, to get the information you want. And again, we're still only scratching the surface. There's tons of different ways to do it. You saw those JSON annotations you can use to really modify how your object is handled. And the last thing I'll mention is something called a DOT, or a data transfer object, I think it is. Yeah, data transfer object. ADA. So I've been doing a little bit of research on this. It is not easy to initiate or to do, so we're not going to cover it in class. It is not necessary for us because a lot of this does require some knowledge of SQL. The only downside of this, DTOs are data transfer objects where you take your entity and you create two classes, up to two, maybe one, but sometimes one or two classes that, or even multiple, even more than one. You create multiple classes that represent the type of data for both maybe inputs for like a post DTO. Say, hey, for the user, I want email, name, password, email, name, and password. I want that to create the user account. When I'm sending the user down though, I only want to send the name and email maybe. And so I would have a post DTO that would accept name, email, and password, and then that would get passed on to the entity and passed on to the repository. So I would accept that data. And that's the data that would accept in from the front end. So that would be the object for the request body. I would use that DTO for the request body. For the output, I would then do a DTO for the output saying, hey, I only want to send back this data. And so there's a way to map that via SQL. Unfortunately, you have to use the query, the @query object for it. So yeah, create query. So I have yet to find any way to do it without having to get into SQL. I was looking into that because I wanted to find a DTO system for that because it can be really, really nice to create customized JSON. That's one of the benefits you get out of DTOs. You get very custom JSON objects for your entities, and they can even be route specific. So they can be very, very useful, very powerful, but they are kind of out of the scope of what we're doing today for this class. So definitely be aware of that. If you do learn more SQL, it is something you can dig into for your final project. If you actually do, and if you have some background in SQL, DTOs could make your final project a little more powerful. All right, there's a keyword for you. Any questions? Probably a bunch.
Did you also look at I'm looking it up because I never heard DTO, but I guess DTO, DAO, DAL, and MVC are all like in kind of the family of ways of moving information from one area to the other.
I will guarantee, I will clarify that there is no one
Yeah.
universal way to manage your data on websites. Because again, data is gold. Data is something that people are constantly trying to get. So how do you secure it? How do you protect it? How do you secure it? Hell, there's a giant article that just got released recently about Amazon's data not being as secure as you think it is, that apparently Amazon employees are doing searches on celebrity purchases and even found a celebrity had purchased an adult toy and knew about it because they were able to search for all the purchases that celebrities were made by just searching under that person's name. It's like, that's not good. The employee should not be able to have that kind of power. But apparently they did. So yeah, it's a huge security issue right now that Amazon, companies such as Amazon is having that issue. So not to mention they also talked, this was actually a while ago. This is like last year, I feel like, or even a year before that. There was that release that like a bunch of customer credit cards were internally exposed. They were not exposed to the full web, but they were exposed internally, that an internal employee could find the credit cards for certain customers. And yeah, you would assume that any active employee isn't going to be malicious, but you get a disgruntled employee that is ready to leave. Before they leave, they can steal a bunch of credit card data.
Well, the whole thing is the employees are already behind the firewall, so they're within the fortress. They can get all the information.
But they shouldn't, though.
I know.
The key thing there.
But it isn't like I'm trying to access it through their AWS and try to get in and try to find out what's and stuff. But
so that's the thing here. Like I said, you could spend hours and days on how to format your JSON data, how to protect it, how to adjust it, what ways to make sure that certain data isn't there. The key items here is just reducing that nested object system and pick and choosing key information. That's all I'm covering today to make sure that our data that's being sent down from our REST API is what we want, no more, no less.
Essential data is what you need.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So the other part of DTOs is just that argument that you shouldn't be exposing your entities to the system. But again, that's a discussion for another day. There you'll find articles up to the end of time about this stuff. So, so my question for you guys is: do we want to maintain this one directional language connection and keep that kind of stuff here, or do we want to go back to what I had before? Because I can merge this to the main if you guys want. I kept it separate, one in case it didn't work. I was still concerned that something might go wrong because I couldn't remember the function, the method name for the repository. Do you want this stuff in there, or would you like to keep the 2-directional version of the language system that we have?
We got to work in with the 2-directional, right? I could still get.
They both work. Yep.
Yeah.
And I can add in this. I can add in the method from what is it? Developer repository. I can just copy this so that we keep this. So yeah, I can just copy that so we can keep it.
I think.
So we want the bidirectional.
I think this way is more efficient than the other way.
So again, I'll put up a poll. Do I merge or no? If the poll system will pop up. There it is.
I'll speak for the whole class here.
That's the thing.
I'll speak for the whole class.
There's an argument for you. Merge.
I would debate that if Elaine was here, though.
Save that. Here. It's untitled. I hate when I untitle these things. Just title it the question. There we go. That's enough. You guys don't see the title, so it's for me. Because I don't know if you see the title. I actually don't know. Launch.
To merge or
You see that? Something out of the way.
Yeah, we see the title.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you.
to merge or to be merged?
That is the question.
To merge or not to merge? That is the question. I didn't go exactly because we're not talking about ourselves.
Are you talking about merging the repository?
Yes. So again, everything we just did with the language thing by turning it not single directional, I did this on a separate branch, not on our not on our main net.
Right.
So the removal of this right here. So if anyone is very unclear, we removed this, the developer list, the developers list from our language entity. And we're doing a one directional relation, many-to-many relationship from developer to language. So it's all managed by the developer. It all works, but again, it's one direction. Like I said, in the current system, if I pull up the language, I do not get a list of developers, which makes sense. But again, I want to make sure I give you guys the option. How many of you are there, by the way? Oh, 11 out of 12.
I like how the poll thanks you for your participation right after you think.
What'd you say?
I like how the
Thanks
poll thanks you. You know, it's a very polite poll.
So there you go. I like that. So someone's abstaining, but since it's 1% out of 12 and it's not a one-away score, we'll go ahead and kill it. So I don't know who's abstaining, but your abstention does not do anything. So share the results.
Stop the count.
Your silent protest means nothing to us.
Stop the count.
So we are going to merge it.
Merge it.
I'm actually happy with that because yeah, I do like this setup of it, and again, it makes more sense to our project.
Well, But I have everything else
I'll
commented.
keep this comment here for you guys for reference, so you can see the 2-directional kind of code. So I'll keep this many comment here so you can see this though. So you do know how it is there, and if you ever want to add it back yourself, you can. You can see that concept. So let's go ahead and do that then. Terminal git add -a. And I'll also show you guys how to do a merge. Checkout. So I committed it. Now you don't have to push your branches to Git to do this. Again, remember GitHub is separate from Git. You can create branches and those branches do not need to even go to GitHub. And part of the reason why I say that is because branches do nothing for you on GitHub. They don't give you any sort of green squares or anything like that. They can be nice for your projects because they can show that you're making branches. They can show that you're separating stuff. But eventually they will show up once you merge them anyway. So once you merge them, that data will get sent to GitHub as well during that next push. Someone's car outside. Jesus Christ, that's loud. I'm on the 6th floor of an apartment building here. Yeah, and there's a parking lot outside of me.
Nice.
I can't even understand the song. I can imagine what the person's eardrums are experiencing right now. God damn. I like loud music, but Jesus.
It's more amazing that I'm only sitting maybe a foot or two away from my television set. And I have a motorcycle driving down Charles Street that's louder than my TV set. I'm like, really? Seriously?
There you go.
And the problem with that is the more you listen at volume, your body gets accustomed to it. So you need to listen
You
to
get
it
louder
louder.
and louder.
I know, but if
Oh,
you
yeah.
put up loudest to get the neighbors to yell at me, the motorcycle's still even more louder than that.
All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and merge. So it's actually a very simple command: git merge lang test. So git merge and then the branch name. That's it. We probably will do a quick other lesson later this month on merge on pull requests if you do end up working together. Well, maybe not. You guys are working on your projects alone, so you probably won't work on that. But anyway, merge. You see all the changes that it brings in. You saw that this was brought back, and then it goes away again.
Just
All
make,
those changes we just made are brought in. All good?
just to update on that, make sure your main or where you're merging to is pushed and stuff.
It's up to date, yes.
so you won't get a conflict.
Oh yeah. Make sure it's up to date. And then I'm gonna push those changes to the repo for you guys. So if anyone wasn't following along on their code with mine before this, go ahead and pull that down now. If you don't want to do all that now, you don't want to try to play catch up with me. I'll leave that there. All right. All that said, I think we actually have our objects the way we want them now. So let's go back over here again quick. Let's check all our objects, make sure they look nice and clean. So we got all of the geek outs. Send. Those look nice. We have the developer information on each one, so we don't have to keep pulling the information. It's all the same, good. For a single geek out. Oops. All right, that's something I forgot. I found that out when I was doing my testing. We never did a get single geek out method, by the way, or route. I'm gonna add that after class today before I push. And so that way it'll be there for you guys to pull, but that's not something I think we need to go over in class. I think you guys know how to get a single item out of a repo. So
That's good for
Okay.
homework.
what's that?
Good for homework.
Yeah, well, you guys can add it, but again, I'm not worried about that one. You guys are gonna create more of them for your next routes. So let's check langs. So developers, our developers look fine. So you get the developers, their languages. Each one gets the languages pulled in, all good. We do a single developer. We get the data we want. Good there. We do developers slash, what was it? Actually, no, it was geekouts slash dev one. We get all the geekouts for a specific developer. That's why I want to put it back into the language controller, but that's fine. We're going to keep where it is. Developers lang one. You see all the developers that code in Java, So Java, all three Javas. And then we'll go ahead and do a Spring Boot ID3, because then it could just get us Travis and myself. So
That's actually showing the rest of the languages. That's supposed to show them all?
it does show the rest of the languages they do, yes, because of how we coded out the developers to show.
Okay.
So again, we're pulling from the developer repository.
Mhm.
So we're pulling from the developer object. So we are going to show the other languages that they know, unfortunately. Yes. This is where, again, it gets more closer to DOTs and stuff, because we would have to add the annotation to the developer entity to not show the languages underneath themselves. So we unfortunately can't hide that here.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So slightly unfortunate, but again, it's all getting to specific areas. But
So
we're
that
getting there.
that just ignore property, you can't do you can't go into languages and do sub properties. Like you can't say, I just don't want to show like number 3 or show something.
Fortunately, no.
Okay.
Not easily. Well,
Okay.
I should add. Yeah, there are ways of doing it. There are ways adding conditional systems and stuff like that. There's a lot of power you have, and there's more methods and stuff under using other parts of the Jackson API package that you have. That's what's being used by Spring Web to do the JSON stuff. If you look deeper into Jackson's system, there are even classes that you can bring in that you can then run on your return results to say, hey, apply things. They have views and everything that you can add on, where you can give certain fields a view property. So you can include certain views. And so it's only certain entities are part of it. They can add a public view and an internal view and others. So there's a bunch of different things you can do to really get into the depths of this. So it in itself is a rabbit hole. We just do not have time in class to go over all of them. So right now, the main goal for you guys, again, wooden plane, get it to a clean environment, but not perfect. That's what you're looking for right now. Clean and good enough for your projects. All right. Good. We got that. We pull up the languages. We get the names of developed languages. We put a single language. We get just that information. Good to get there. And yeah, we got our photo system, but we don't need to pull those individually. I don't know what that is. Oh, that's them trying to pull up the image. Weird. All right. Good. 851. No, actually, no, not going to do anything else. So I have the homework for you guys for the weekend is going to be to clean up your car rental application. So add some of these systems, decide whether or not your lists, your relationships are one directional or two directional. And let's actually look at some of them. Let's decide together. Let's get some ideas. I'm honestly, again, I don't know if I want to enforce a certain one yet. Again, these I actually like the idea of having some of your guys' items be unique. Being slightly different, because I don't want them all the same. So that way you guys can use these as projects. There it is. But if you take a look at these, so are we adding stores to a vehicle, or are we adding vehicles to a store?
Adding vehicles to the store.
Yeah.
I like that. And so this one probably would be identical to our developer geek out, probably, right?
Yes.
Similar to that one. So probably we could probably do this single directional, right?
Mhm.
Yep. We don't always need to see the store that a vehicle is under. We definitely need to see all the vehicles that a store
In the
has.
store.
Sorry, no, other way around. We don't need to see all the vehicles the store has.
Okay, but the
When we're
vehicle has
listing
to
the
have the
store-
store in it.
Exactly. The vehicle
Okay.
has to have the store listed, so we know what a vehicle is. But yeah,
Got
we
it.
don't need, when we're pulling up our list of stores, we don't need the giant list of vehicles that they have, right?
Well,
Right.
yeah.
So I would think that could be one directional there. We definitely don't need a list of vehicles in the store entity. That's not needed, because we know you can, but you can definitely have, you probably already have the route to find all vehicles by store ID, right?
Mhm.
Probably already have that route. If not, hey, there's one you can create. Customer to stores. Are we ever adding a store to a customer, or are we always adding a customer to a store?
Customer to a store.
And same thing here. Are we ever going to want to see the list of stores of customers that a store has?
Our list of customers. Yes and
No.
no.
No, we don't really need the list of customers when we pull the store. When we pull a single store, do we want it to include that list of customers?
Oh, no.
automatically.
No.
No. We do want people to do a search for customers based on a store.
Hmm.
And it is something we could, and I will say for the customer though, we probably also don't necessarily need the list of stores the customer's been. That will be smaller, so it's not a big deal. It's kind of like languages. We would presume it's probably a small list. But one thing you can do, of course, is you can still provide the field, but use JSON ignore if you don't want to provide it. So if you did want to, let's say in your version of it, in languages here, we could have kept this here. So in case we ever want to see it, in case we wanted that in the back end, we had it. We can also just do JSON ignore. So you can always hide it. But even in this one, yeah, I would say that, yeah, I would treat this similar to what we have for our languages. So store is considered language here, not customer. So even though in the previous one, we were considering store as being our developers. So be aware, again, these are not one-to-one parallels. Be very, very clear on that stuff. These are not one-to-one parallels. In this example between vehicle and store, yes, I see store as our developer and posts as our geek out, or geek out as our vehicle. And store is our developer. I really should have changed this. Oh. In the store to customer system, I see customer as our developer and store as our language. Because the store will definitely have a lot more customers than a customer will have of stores. And same thing here. Languages will likely have a lot of developers, whereas each individual developer will not have, will maybe have at most like 10 languages listed underneath them, right?
Mm.
So that's the thing that I'm keeping in mind here. So customer should be, if it's two directional, go for it. But if it is one directional, I would say customer would be the primary direction, would be the manager there. And in a vehicle and location, you can mimic that with our developer, kind of mimic it, but not exactly. So again, there's luckily for this, it should already, I think it's already was one directional. On this one though, I think this one is two. I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. Is this two directional or one directional? Do we want a vehicle field in our location?
Well, if we do that, then well, which is interesting. You said you can actually have a couple fields, meaning in and out. You can actually have it. You can update the field if the car is in or out on the table, and if it's like one's null, that means it's out, and if the other one's in or so, we can have that. Or
Yeah,
I don't know.
I could.
That.
I'm personally going to. I want to have a discussion with you guys. So please give me your feedback on what you think. I'm personally thinking this could be bi-directional. Actually, being able to pull a vehicle and know where it is, have the vehicle tell me its location, but at the same time being able to pull a location and seeing if there's a vehicle there. Right?
If there's a vehicle there, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the exact vehicle.
No, it can. It can tell us the exact vehicle.
Oh, okay. Because I have a Boolean in my location that says is occupied, yes or no. So it says that it's occupied. It doesn't say that there's
True.
a vehicle in there.
And that's if you're using a single directional version, you would need that. Yes. If we actually had the bi-directional, then the fact of whether or not the location was null or not, or the vehicle's location was null or not, would tell us if it's available or not. If the vehicle's location is null, we know it's not available. So the vehicle's location field could act as our is available Boolean potentially. So, but again, by doing that, you can turn it into single directional. So it depends on what works. So that's why I'm saying, please feedback people. This one's more discussion for you guys. This is great about
My
this
thought
project for you
process
guys.
is that we should only know that if there is a vehicle there. It doesn't matter which vehicle there, as long as something's there.
That's what I
Because
was
if you want to
thinking.
look for the location, you just go through vehicle.
True. And in that case, you could always just you could do a bunch of JSON ignores and just return the ID for a JSON ignore property, where you only return the ID of the vehicle, just to know, hey, there was a vehicle there. Or null. So you could do that where that way the data is clean. So under the location item, you can put that it has a vehicle, but it JSON ignores properties, everything but ID. You could do that.
No, one other thing I was thinking more is it's a little bit easier is just to have the vehicle have a tag that goes to a slot number and it always goes there. So it actually has a fixed spot all the time.
I see that, but at the same time, I also don't, because over time, really, you're just going to move things around.
Yeah, but
if you have a
can
car that is
you can
rented
tell that
almost all the time, you want to keep
Yeah,
it near the entrance, right?
Well, you can easily
yeah,
match
like-
it up. You can match up which vehicle number to the spot where it belongs to, if it exists or not. One.
True, but then I can also
and
limit.
tag number when you
Yeah.
need it.
Keith, what's your argument to that?
No, I rented a car in the summertime in Florida, and when you pull into the airport, you got to drop it off, and it's just rows. Like you just pull into a row, and there's rows of all people just showing up with their rental cars and dropping them off. So in other words, the argument is basically the car would never be in the same position every time it's dropped off.
Not now. But just like what you said in Providence, in Providence in the mall.
Not saying, again, you
Never
can't do
did-
that. Just, yeah, I do know that companies don't really care about that. They just want to put the car in the easiest spot to get to.
Yeah, it's just it's when you
Yeah.
show up with the car, just drop it off. You just
Yeah.
park it
I'm
where
thinking
there's
ro-
available
I'm
spot.
thinking future. I'm
in a
thinking
row.
future robotics. I'm thinking robotics and futureness.
But if we're getting that fancy with it, you could also argue just, hey, I'm going to actually store more. I'm going to actually have more cars than I have spots available because I'm going to have X number of cars rented at any given time, and I'll have some overflow elsewhere that I can send over if more cars come back.
But if you
So-
want to do it that way, you can do it virtually. You can have infinite amount of spots for an infinite amount of cars.
Yep. And that's what's interesting about it. So there's a bunch of ways to do this stuff. And that's what's fun about this, is being able to really discuss how do you want to implement it. You can definitely have a location in the vehicle paired up one-to-one. But then in that case, if you're doing that, we don't need this separate database anymore then. We just put the location field in the vehicle. And again, that's what we're trying to, I was trying to avoid that with this example by just saying that, yeah, the location is not bound to a vehicle. The location then where the vehicle is going to be parked can be changed every time you bring it back. Just find, hey, a car's been returned. What spots are available? Here's the one you want to bring it to. Bring it there. Hey, you want a car? Well, where's that car located? It's there. Here's where it is. Go pick it up. So, and this would be great for, again, if you're having customers get their car and return their car, the customer is going to return it to whatever parking spot they see first. They're not going to bring it to a specific spot.
What's weird is when you return it, they're in rows, just like
Yeah.
long rows of cars. But when you go to take the car, that's regular parking. Like you said, there's parking spots
Yeah.
with numbers,
Yeah.
and they just tell you where the car is, right? Like you
Mhm.
said.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's very interesting to see what really cool sometimes actually just see some of these systems, like how they do implement it themselves. But it's also, and again, I like these projects because it's really good to just try to come up with something on what you think it is. And you really get a good amount of insight for the systems that are out there. So these are great practice items to do. That's why I always tell you guys, come
I'm
up with
trying
your
to
own
think, like
ideas.
there's people in each row that work there
Mhm.
that have like iPads and they're checking you in.
Yep.
So in other words, when you pull up, they just put in all the data. They didn't even look over the car, actually. There's so many cars. There's so many people. It's ridiculous.
Have you ever been by the G Pub place over there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever looked at the
lifts.
inside the garage on
Yeah,
right
the
next
lifts.
to the parking slot over there?
Oh
have
yeah,
not.
yeah.
They have the elevators where they put the cars like stacking upon each other, and they park them like high and
Yeah.
Cool.
spaces.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this system here would definitely be more relatable to some of those parking systems in like Japan and stuff, where especially the bike ones with the underground bike storage, where you pull up, you put the bike in, it grabs it by the wheel, brings it down and slides it into a slot somewhere underground. And so again, you come back to get your bike, and it pulls it out, brings it up, gives it to you. And then of course it has an empty spot again that it can put someone else's bike in. This is not the best relationship for a car rental app, because again, yeah, you can definitely say a spot belongs to a certain car. 100% you can do that. The main thing for us again is we sometimes bend the rules and bend the use cases so that we can get good examples out of it. So we can get good, interesting
It's
use
interesting
cases.
because there's two locations, because when you pull in, that's,
Yeah.
when you're returning the car. And
Yeah.
then when you go to pick it, then it gets probably cleaned and gassed up, whatever they do to it, and put it in the other spot
Mhm.
when it's available.
Very true. Yeah, and then that's the key thing with this system here is we can have, two different locations: back storage, front storage, and overflow locations for each store. Each store can even have multiple locations too. So again, this can be really, really interesting in how it's implemented, what you do with it. That's why I'm letting you guys have more freedom with it. And why I'm telling you this will be my idea. This is, I think, single directional here, with store being the main, vehicle being the other guy. Here, the customer to store. If it was one directional, customer would be the controller or the main one to store the main data to generate the mapping. And then for vehicle to location, I think that one could definitely be argued as a 2-directional. But if 1-directional, then yeah, either one could be the main, and just depending on how you do it, you need to find some way to know, hey, whether if vehicle's the main, you would just need to make sure location has some extra field there to know that it's available to have a car put in or not. And for vehicle, if location's the main, vehicle just needs to know whether or not it's available to be rented. Is it available to be rented? So I'm just giving you my ideas. None of them are set in stone. Definitely feel free to apply what you think fits most, but main thing here, make changes to your system. All right. That's going to be your homework for the weekend. Finish up on the vehicle to location system. So get that functioning as we needed. So make sure that is finished. That's your homework. Get that working, the vehicle to location relationship, and then refactor your relationships to be either 2-directional, 1-directional, and clean up those return JSON so they're not as nested as they were. Again, the goal here is we want to avoid that JSON identity info unless it makes sense to have it. So any questions on that? Cool. So I'll put in an assignment for that. And let me go ahead and what I'll do now is before I even, if anybody wants to watch me create the get one geek out, you can. That way I don't forget to do it. But let's go ahead and do it in classroom. There it is, classroom. Ooh. Assignment. Do we feel a little better about what we tried to do yet on Tuesday now? Do we see more of some of the powers we have?
Yes.
And how we can clean up our data a little better now?
Mhm.
And were these tools a little easier than what we tried to do yesterday with interfaces and child classes, things like that? Yeah, the interface, I will clarify, by the way, the interface thing I did is one of the things that needed another package that I didn't realize. That's why it didn't work. So, Java, mark.
Or optional.
Yep. Also, I've been really enjoying you guys actually turning these items in. It's been good to spot check from you guys. So keep doing it, turn it in, submit the homework. I love it. It's great to see you guys actually building these projects out. And at any time, if you submit it and if you do submit one and you want actual full feedback, make a mention to me, because if you're concerned it may not be a good implementation, you're not confident in it, feel free to mention that to me. I'll definitely, if I can find, now that the hackathon's over, kind of, we do have to do the final thing, which, yeah, by the way, so for the hackathon people, sorry about not getting around to doing that. Arnell totally forgot about his birthday this weekend. Travis knows what I'm talking about.
Classic or no?
How do you forget your own birthday?
The Arnell,
Don't know.
step one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, be Arnell. Managing multiple classes and multiple meetings and events on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he said, I'm like, you're right, yeah, right before Thanksgiving's your birthday. I even kind of forgot because we're just running around with our head cut off, I swear. But now that the hackathon's for the most part over, we just have to do presentations and then vote. That's the last bit. So again, I know you guys are thinking maybe next week, Monday or Tuesday, once Arnell's back. I think I'll put up a poll at some point. I'm going to try to remind him tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, we'll figure out the day to do that. But now that that's over, I have more time. So yeah, if any of these homeworks you submit it and you're not confident in your implementation, feel free to ping me, say, hey, I want feedback from it. So, because as much as I want to look at through every single one of your submissions that you guys post here, I tend to just spot check. I'll pull one or two up, and unless I see something egregious, I tend to just leave it. So, let's see.
We found JPA a lot easier to do than using like entity factories and using the factories.
What was that?
Have you tried, did you look into using the factories in Spring Boot?
I saw a post on that and using like, what are they, services and facades and stuff. And
using using the entity factory and all those to create like.
yeah, and the entity manager class. And I saw those things like, it does have power behind it, but just it's very, I was concerned it's going to be too confusing and it would slow us down a lot.
Oh, I firmly agree. It is quite
Yeah.
powerful and quite powerful what you can
Yeah.
do with those things. But I found it very, very like slightly. I mean, I understood to some degree, but also confusing to also to some degree.
Yeah.
JPA is much easier.
Exactly. And that was my goal for you guys. Again, I don't need to make you guys masters of Java. I need to get you guys skilled in Java. Once you guys are skilled in this stuff and you understand the basic flow and stuff and build basic things, you can learn a lot more on site. That's key. Once we get you into the job, a lot of it you'll learn while there. And with a good, strong foundation of basic understandings, you will learn quickly. That's what I need to do for you guys. And yeah, when I was looking at how do I want to approach JPA, Java Spring Boot, I'm like, we're going JPA. We just don't have, we don't have the time to go too deep into SQL, but we do have enough time. But we also we are going to touch base a little bit on it because you do get SQL questions during your interview, so we will touch base on some of it. Yep. But yeah.
I put in SQL with the managers. I put in some. You can inject SQL and do SQL queries there too. But man, those things were just a horror show.
Not to mention, if you really get deep into Spring Boot, I will warn you guys that the annotation system can get insane. We are avoiding some annotations by just letting the system do it all its own. Simple enough, like the repository system, there is an actual app repository annotation that we can add. It's not necessary, but they exist. So there's a lot of annotations we are not putting in there.
I thought that was required.
No.
Oh.
Nope. I haven't added it once because it's not required. It's definitely nice to put it in sometimes and make sure that you define it correctly. And it might have warned me that one time with that very first repository made for this project that I forgot to put the JPA repository extension in there, the long and the little bracket things. It might have yelled at me when I forgot to do that, but yeah, it's definitely not required, but it's similar to the override system.
Yeah. Okay.
If you put it there, it can help to make sure you implement it correctly, but it's not required to be utilized. Similar concept. Yep.
Yes, teaching Spring Boot's a little bit easier than having me run roughshod and trying to figure it out myself.
Yep.
I did a good job though, in actually figuring out myself. I got stuff working, so I'm proud of that. Of doing that. So.
No, I'm definitely good. Yeah, no, some of you guys who definitely learned Java on a lot of it on your own, very impressed with it. Because yeah, it's the main thing I will say about Spring Boot. It is very wide because of how long it's been in use. There's a lot of packages. There's a lot of ways to do this. There's a lot of different ways you can implement it. One of the way we're implementing it right now is just one out of probably 20 different ways you can build a RESTful API with Java. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. There's other packages you can use that are not Spring Web. You can use non-Spring Web items because again, Spring Boot is technically two separate things. You have Spring and Boot, and Spring Boot is a thing that's added together. So you can use just Spring and add other web-based packages. You can add other ways of parsing your JSON data. You can utilize different systems for database management. We've mentioned JDBC, Hibernate, JPA. There's other tools that you can use out there. You can even just bypass it all again and just go with straight Firebase kind of packages and stuff like that. There's a bunch of different things out there that allow you to do the same thing. All I can do is find one key effective one we can use that isn't too complex, that's going to take us months to learn, that is fairly quick to learn and gets you enough that you can start fiddling with Spring Boot. And you know the key terms, you know the key phrases, you know the key concepts, entities, models, controllers, things like that. So. Sound good for you guys? Refactor relationships to clean up your JSON responses and implement accurate one or two directional relationships. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Monday, and again, yep, next week we have a 2-day class again.
Yeah.
Jesus, Thanksgiving already. God damn it.
I was wondering about the hackathon, like Monday or Tuesday, or like, well, it can't be
That's
Thursday.
the plan, yeah, because we don't have class on Thursday, so
Thursday,
Thanksgiving.
Saturday, but Saturday,
All
Friday, Saturday, but yeah.
Again, most likely either tomorrow or Monday, we'll pull you guys in the hackathon chat room. So just keep an eye on it. We'll try to find a day for you guys. Again, as much as we probably want to say like the projects are done, honestly, we can't stop you guys from working on it. So if you're still dabbling with it, we can't really stop you guys. So if you want to, feel free to take advantage of the fact that we haven't gone over it yet. If you want to meet up with your
I
with
was
your
leaving
teammates,
my code trashy and all.
I can't stop you from meeting with your teammates and working on it.
We've been trying to.
I'm setting up a whole weekend
There you
hackathon now.
go. Hey, if you guys do your own thing, we can't really stop you guys. So if you decide to meet up for you guys over the weekend, there's a good chance over the weekend I will actually be at Niantic myself doing some work on a side item there that I was doing while you guys were working on the hackathon. So not going to put this on the public record, but if anyone wants to ask, hey, Cliff, are you there right now? We want to come by and work. I will be like, sure.
That's good to know.
So yeah, you can at least ask me if I'm there because I do plan to be there a couple days out of the weekend.
Okay, that's good.
Yep. So let me know if you guys are planning to do something because I will. Again, I won't be providing free food that day though. Just be aware of that.
I was about to ask where was this again?
Oh, food on Cliff. All right.
No free food on Cliff. I do not have the company credit card, so it's not happening. And these would be unofficial meetups.
It's okay, Cliff. We're okay with Wendy's.
Sorry, Wendy's for a good 8 people could still hit almost $100. So
No,
Yeah,
man,
man.
it's not pretty sad. That's pretty sad.
Yeah.
I need the dollar menu. Don't worry about me.
Just get the $5 biggie bags.
Yeah,
There you go.
exactly.
There you go. Who knows? Maybe if you guys do show up, maybe we'll figure something out together. We'll do like a
Pizza.
pooling or something. Pizza.
Yeah.
There you go.
Even that would be good. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
That would be probably coming out of my own pocket, maybe. I mean, then again, if you guys do pull it off, maybe I'll convince Arnell to give me something.
Just text Arnell. He'll just be like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, probably, but I'd never assume. The way I was raised, never assume that someone's going to pay for something. Only ever do something you can do yourself.
Why never assume anything?
What?
Why never assume?
It makes an ass out of both you and me.
Exactly.
There you
Exactly.
go.
Precisely.
All right, so got that. Java homework. Post that as assigned. Awesome. Good stuff. Go back to the code. There's our geek out controller. So aggravated that I don't have that mapping. That was so stupid. You guys still chat, by the way. I'm just going to go ahead and add this quick for you guys' project or the repo, because again, we've done this before. So return. There we go. That's in there now. And the main reason why I want to do this because what I'm hoping to do, last thing I'll say to you guys before you guys head out then, and I stop the recording actually, just realized it's recording. So the main reason why I didn't want to do anything new today is because when we get back, we're doing the complicated one for the next 2 days so that I'm hoping that we can finish it for the break. We want to create this relationship for Monday and Tuesday. So Monday and Tuesday, we're going to be creating this many-to-many complex relationship that has 8 likes item in between. So that's going to be the key thing we're going to be doing that day. So we're going to be discussing how to build this item and how to create this item as through JPA. So Monday, we're going to create it and start creating it, building the system out, and creating those relationships and those routes for it. So the goal is for that to take 2 days. Over the weekend, you'll then add that to over the Thanksgiving break. You'll be able to add that to your system and finalize your version of it. When we get back, the final thing we'll be doing, starting with the final week of November and the first week of December, is getting. My expectation is to build our user system, get into JPA security, and then we finish up with a crash course into React and SQL. So we can build a basic front end for our 2 sites. Sound good? And after that, it's your final project. We move on to interview prep and algorithms. So that's going to be that's December. December is going to be your final projects. That's going to be your homework stuff. We'll be doing algorithms. How do we solve algorithms? How do we approach algorithms? Do we talk about more data structures and stuff like that? So we can prep for the final tests, do some hackathon stuff, hacker rank stuff, and interview prep. We're going to start building out your resumes and stuff like that. Sound good? Crazy to think we're that close, huh?
Crazy.
Hasn't
You
been
guys are
far.
getting closer.
Yeah. And then you'll be hanging out with Evan a bunch, and Evan will have people he can start practicing with again. However, I'm hoping before then you'll be interviewing Evan, so you won't need to worry about that. You'll be out of here before they get there.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too.
I want you out before Christmas.
That'd be the best.
So pressure.
So I'm hoping. Hey, we're hoping that again. As soon as we get your project from OpenShift, we gotta go. We got a couple. I think 2 companies we're already IDing with your OpenShift project. So we're eyeballing you for that project. So make sure you're working on that. I know that I told the other team, like at least a personal one, if not the hackathon one, your own personal one at least. But
Okay.
keep working on your stuff with OpenShift. Keep learning that, because the goal is we have 2 companies we're eyeballing for you for that. And then depending on how that goes, again, that's what you guys, especially some of the other hackathon people who participated. Some of you might even go early for that. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. Take a stab at this. We'll say if you do feel I'm going to reopen office hours on Sunday now that the hackathon and everything's all over. So on Sunday, not Saturday, Sunday, I will be on the Zoom between 1 and 3 again. So that'll be back open for Sunday. So I'll post that link on Sunday. Sound good?
Wait, Cliff,
Go for it.
maybe we should talk about that, like how viable the hackathon project is for Red Hat, or if I need to build something else.
Well, that's why we wanted you to see the project. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Again, there's a good chance that what you're making is viable. We're good with it. If you think the final project, the project you're making for the hackathon is viable, build it. If you can go with that, and if you feel like you want to, if you need to separate it into a separate one, so you don't feel like you're overachieving on the other teams and you feel bad, you can do that. But feel free to do what you need to do for that stuff. Again, I'm telling, and there's several other hackathon people here who can hear that whatever project you're building for with the hackathon is going to be used for your interviews. We want to put that project on your resume. So put effort into it. All right. So what is that? Travis, Freddie, who else was there? Jim.
I'm actually working. I'm still working.
OpenShift hates me.
I love that statement. OpenShift.
That's a good t-shirt.
There you go. Look at that.
More merch ideas.
Like I said, we will be doing.
Are we
I'd buy
gonna be
that one.
learning OpenShift as part of the curriculum?
Yes, we will be learning it later as well. So if you
I
did
think
not, for those of you who
Val
did not
mentioned-
participate in the hackathon, don't panic. You'll just be learning it on your own. As once we finish the React stuff, we build our full end app. We're actually going to be pushing this stuff to Red Hat, OpenShift.
We
So-
lost the partnership. It's over.
It's this new company.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be pushing this
Knockoff.
to OpenShift. We're going to be uploading and hosting this system on the OpenShift system so that you know how to do it. I'm actually, right now what I'm trying to do, and I might even pick your brain a bit on this, Jim, later on I'm going to do this during the Thanksgiving break or early December, is the local version of OpenShift. Getting local versions, because the downside of what we did with the hosted variation of it is, I think it's either 60 or 90 days of a demo of it. So after that time, your sandbox gets destroyed. And so anything you have hosted there would no longer be hosted.
Oh, I see.
Yep. But with the local version, it's you managing it so it stays hosted. It stays
Yeah.
loading. And what you could look into for anyone who is interested or has maybe even a spare computer, if you do have one, not saying you have to, but anyone who wants to, you can actually utilizing a tool known as No IP or a dynamic DNS dynamic DNS provider. I think like there's free versions of it and even smaller like paid versions. You can actually host a web server from your own computer via your dynamic IP from home. So even though you have a dynamic IP address at home, you can set up a web server that you can then host a website from your home that you can put on your resume and actually show a live running website on your resume using OpenShift. And
Sounds cool.
I feel like Matt is looking up No IP right now.
Oh.
No, I saw the
We'll
typing as soon as I said it.
We'll say yes.
yeah.
No, I was pushing my stuff to Git.
Pushing this Commodore 64.
Has, something called tunneling or like fire tunneling. If I remember
What is
correctly,
it?
Cloudflare or Cloudflare has something called tunneling where it allows you to host like local IP addresses.
Yeah, things like that. I was saying that there's a bunch of tools out there now that do it. Like this is just one of the companies I know of. There's a bunch of, I found out there's a bunch of companies now that are doing it. Mostly the gaming community has pushed it because gamers want to be able to run their own local servers for their multiplayer games and have their friends join them, so they don't have to deal with trolls. Sergio probably knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But dealing with trolls on online games can be really annoying. So players want to create their own private servers, but they don't want to pay for a server because their computer's strong. They have the gaming computers that are strong enough to manage a multiplayer game. So this allows them to put their local dynamic IP public for their friends to be able to join their games with no issues. So these are becoming bigger and bigger, not to mention the fact that you have small businesses who want to run a website and on their own system, but don't want to pay for the business level static IPs from Verizon and stuff like that. That can get really, really expensive. So these companies have, Cloudflare, I know IP. This is just one of them. So dynamic DNS systems. So
There was some, I think it was like not IO. There was a few other.
I'm sure there's one with a .io.
The countries that give away their domain, like I don't know, RI or whatever, give away for free. You can have your own website for that.
Damn. Yeah, there's a bunch of tools out there now that allows you guys to use your own personal computer, put a website on it, host something on it, do the porting and all this stuff, and actually get a website hosted without having to pay for hosting services. But we can still utilize a hosting service since OpenShift can be run locally on your own system on your own. So you can run your own Red Hat OpenShift system on your own home system, utilize it, get pods going, get those systems running, learn how to utilize it, and then host or serve a OpenShift application across the internet on your own system, which can be very, very powerful for resume with Red Hat or any other company. So for some of you maybe I didn't hear, one of the companies we are currently in communication with is Red Hat. So Red Hat is a company we are in talks with that wants to hire some of you guys. So big company, major company, been around for a while now. Really, really cool opportunity for you guys. Have a nice recognizable company that you can go work for that wants motivated, hungry developers. So that's why we're going to try that. So I might talk to you a bit about it, Jim, if I run into any problems doing it locally, but I plan to start doing that soon. So,
all right.
But I'll talk to some of you guys over the weekend. Like I said, I'll probably be at the Niantic office probably tomorrow and even a little bit on Saturday. So if anyone wants to swing by to do some work, even if you're working on some of this homework stuff and you just want to come by just to work on your homework nearby so you can ask questions, that's fine too. So, but just ping me to ask me if I'm there and I'll let you guys know from there. All good?
Yep.
All good.
Cool.
That's good.
I think we'll kill it then.
Have a good weekend.
We're doing, guys. And if anything doesn't work, just let me know. We'll touch base more on Monday.
Okay.
All right, see ya.
Everybody.
Adios.
All right,
Bye.
have a good night.
Take care, everybody.